On tonight's program, we go through an after-action report on the Purity series. There's a market for this. People like this, and I hope more people do other series like Foundry Limitations Getting You Down. We've got some tips for you.
Very often the solution for a lot of Foundry Limitations is storytelling, which I love.
And there's been some additions to the Foundry on Tribble. We give you the full details. And I told him to, go ahead and tag it how he thought it should be tagged afterwards. And so I look on mine now, and it's got one tag listed under, story, combat, space, solo, coming up on the Foundry Roundtable. Hello, and welcome to episode 38 of the Foundry Roundtable, the podcast exclusively covering the Foundry for Star Trek Online. I'm your tame Foundry author, Drogan1701. With me is practitioner of the most foul and heinous art of crochet, Hippie John.
Now everyone knows that. Oh.
I outed you.
Yes, I'm actually very good at crochet. Knitting confuses me, though.
Oh, he made me a very nice doily.
And we have with us also the second runner-up in last week's Miss Andoria pageant, Green Dragoon.
I would have been first if it wasn't for that meddling Andorian.
And we have a man who bought up every last share of Twitter in this week's IPO, and let me tell you guys, he is a hardcore Twitter user. Mark Hawkman.
I deny everything.
And with us is longtime Foundry author and a guy who has to be sitting on millions upon millions of dilithium in tips, Rogue Enterprise.
Yes, that's me. Sorry, my Starbase I did all already.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. It's good to have you here again.
Hey, it's awesome to be here.
Well, guys, we got lots and lots of news. Obviously, Purity 6 came out last week. We will be talking a bit more about that later, so we'll save it for then. But we have a winner.
So congratulations, Drogan, on publishing it. That's all. Before we, move on. Congrats on.
Well, thank you. I think I said in the last podcast I had not actually published a mission since we started this podcast in January of 2013, and here I published 2 last week, so pretty awesome. But anyway, we have a winner in challenge number 8, which is Divide at Regnus by Captain Hunter. So congratulations to him.
That was my vote, by the way. I did play all of them. There were a lot of really good missions in that challenge. Mm-hmm. I still encourage people to go play them if you like time travel. There's a lot of really good stories there.
And as I understand it, the winner by Captain Hunter was something where you could go back in time and change your actions during Divide et Impera. Is that right?
You don't actually get to change your actions. Divide et Impera is my most hated cryptic mission. Nothing about it ever made any sense to me, the whole thing, from the first time I played it. He takes the time and the care with his storytelling to explain why things happened the way that they did and how they happened, and a whole lot of plot holes, and it's really, really well done.
Nice. Let's see. My God, It's Full of Stars and P. Sutherland tied for runner-up, and Maki and The Best Captain tied for third. So congratulations to those guys.
A lot of good authors in that bunch.
Yeah.
Yep. And the thing that I like about the challenges is there's always a few guys who join in that I've never heard of. They're first-time authors or people who haven't got a lot of plays or publicity before now. So I always like to see that. I think that it's a great tool for bringing in new people or people who haven't been out there very much.
Yeah, it's definitely
Not agree more.
A great way for, especially new authors who don't have a lot of... P. Sutherland, you mentioned him. I think has gotten a lot more notoriety since he won his first Foundry challenge, so...
Yeah, he's somebody who kind of, popped onto the scene during that first challenge. He also goes by Faye8472 on the forums.
He had a lot of missions beforehand.
Did he?
Before, the one that won the challenge is a part of a storyline that he's developed, this kind of alternate thing that's going on with this race, the Skara, and he's got a lot of missions that deal with this alternate kind of storyline. That's pretty cool. I like it.
Mm-hmm. I know he's become a big part of the community, posting a lot on forums. He's regular in our chat room. So, I mean, it's great, and I encourage anybody else who makes Foundry missions, even if it's not for the challenge, to kind of be a part of the community. So, moving on, we've got Foundry updates on Tribble, both direct and indirectly related to the Foundry. And these are, I assume, going live with Season 8 on Tuesday. So, first and most important is the mission tagging system.
Yay!
Yeah, this is a port over from Neverwinter, which, according to Captain Gecko's interview with the GNT show, is the first of several. I think probably the only one to go online with Season 8. The rest will come later. But obviously there's one more day for them to make Tribble updates, I guess, before Season 8 launches. We'll see what happens Monday. So essentially, when you finish playing a mission and the review window pops up, there's an option to tag missions as any of these categories: story, combat, space, ground, solo, group, and puzzle. And you can tag a mission in multiple categories, as many as you feel applies to the mission. So it is players that are deciding what a mission is, essentially. The game collects all of these tags that people leave, and if you go to the mission summary page, right below where it tells you the star rating, where you can click on view to look at the reviews, right below is a display of how many of each type of category it's been checked. So look. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I pulled up in the copy of Inner Shadow that Midas on Tribble, and it was like, below the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's all of the different tags. Mm-hmm. But of course, they all had 0 out of thousands.
Well, I had Hera7, who's another regular in our chat room, play my little mission on Tribble. It's just a one-map mission. And I told him to, go ahead and tag it how he thought it should be tagged afterwards. And so I look on mine now, and it's got one tag listed under, story, combat, space, solo, and no tags listed under group, puzzle, and ground. So this gives us some more search options as well. If you go to the Browse All and set to Custom Search, you'll see more drop-down menus at the bottom of the search window. You can search for any of the tags you check. You can search for all of the tags that you check. Or you can set it to exclude certain tags. So you say you hate puzzles. So you can tell it to exclude any mission that has been tagged as having puzzles.
I kind of wonder how this is going to work with so many missions that haven't been tagged yet.
I believe that it's just going to start building it based on how they get tagged initially.
Yeah.
There's almost no way to see how this is going to play out until it gets in the live environment because so few people play on Tribble.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then, it's kind of one of those unavoidable things, but still.
I mean, I've been asking almost every of the authors I know to, go help me out and test my Tribble thing, and everybody's like, I don't have Tribble installed. You useless people, I tell you.
I'm sorry.
I testing and looking for bugs and
if I update Tribble, I will play the new content, and I really, really want to experience it as polished as they get it.
You're dooming the Foundry because of your lack of willpower here.
In fairness, Hippie, I have been on Tribble and I have not touched the new Vault Dyson Sphere stuff. I only went on there to check out.
Hippie's a little too compulsive for that. It'll be like, ooh, shiny stuff, and then you won't be able to.
Bingo. Rogue is right. I'm too compulsive.
I got distracted by massacring the boss in that ground combat zone.
See?
I
don't want that to happen.
I never went anywhere else on Tribble after I entered the ground combat arena.
Well, see, I understand that compulsion because I've gone and looked at it and I've tried to as little as possible so I can kind of experience most of it as it comes out. But mostly I have done some in-depth testing on Tribble and I think I don't see any major issues. The thing with the become a reviewer function not working has been fixed.
Did it actually get fixed, or because I know
it's actually fixed.
They swapped it to, and now everyone was a reviewer.
Nope. As of like Friday, when I tested Friday, it's fixed. So, as you know, I don't foresee that going live since it's fixed now. So, as far as I can tell, there aren't any other bugs in the Foundry. I mean, you know, all of the things that went wrong in Legacy of Romulus were things that people saw on Tribble and just were never addressed. I don't see anything now.
Did you, I would say, wasn't there an issue for a while with reach markers not being marked properly?
That was in preview. I have to go back and look and see if that's still the case. When I tested my mission, which relies on a lot of reach markers, I know I say I hate spaced reach markers, but I kind of built my Tribble mission as a proof of concept of something I want to do live, which is completely based on reach markers. And it works.
Awesome.
So far. All of the little mission rings tell you where to go or in the right place in the published version. So.
Cool.
Okay, so it may have just been a preview bug.
Possibly.
Which is a lot less serious.
Yes. We all know that preview is buggy as hell.
Yeah, but I mean, I think most of us, when we're previewing our missions, already know where all the reach markers are.
It's very true. So, the other thing that's going on Tribble, this has just happened Friday, is they retextured the Federation consoles with new LCARs, to be more colorful like the ones from the TNG era series. So, gone are the blue consoles. Although,
sort of.
Not exactly.
Is it a Foundry asset or elsewhere in
This is everything, or it's supposed to be everything.
Yeah, it seems like
they,
every Federation.
Yeah, it seems like though they haven't actually changed them all yet. So on Tribble right now, you got this weird mixture of colorful consoles right next to blue consoles.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, though even the colorful consoles, it looked like there was like now a mixture of blue and yellow.
Yeah, in some cases. But I mean, if you go to like the Galaxy Bridge, some of the consoles are the new, really colorful ones, and some of them are blue. The old blue. I mean, we've been living with these things for a long time. I know what they make sure that they're not the new textures. If you go to like the ship interiors, you'll see some of the assets have the new consoles, and some of them don't. Like if you go into main engineering, all of the consoles are the new ones. If you step out into the hallway, there's some displays along the hallway that are the old blue ones.
Huh.
Now, the ones I saw looked kind of like they were like really low res, like lower than the Belfast Bridge.
Yeah, Taco Fangs was addressing that on the forums. He said that it kind of comes down to because Thomas the Cat built these things, built these new textures, and made them really high-res versions, of course. The problem is these are really old assets. These are assets from the beginning of the game, these consoles. And a lot of them, he said, the textures weren't wrapped onto the objects properly. So if you replace the texture, it's, putting one down on top of the other. And it's just,
And I get it. All of a sudden the high-res version is on this very
poorly
non-complete, poorly constructed
object. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't claim to fully understand all of that, but I kind of get what he's going for there.
Yeah, because if you look at all the consoles like that were original to launch, they're lower quality than stuff that came later.
Much.
They had this but they would build like much more these dense, fuzzier consoles that really didn't look anything like LCARs at all.
Yeah, there's those ones that have it's basically just a giant screen with a bunch of random numbers on it and some sort of outline to make it big.
Well, he was asking folks to give him, the specific instances of ones that didn't look good. And I'm hoping that they'll get the rest of those textures uploaded so that all of the consoles are consistent.
I hope in a lot of cases it's like the Foundry assets where they can go to the specific asset and it'll auto-update or be just automatically populate to all the maps that asset is in.
Well, I think that's the idea. It's just they haven't updated all the assets yet, and some don't look very good with the new textures.
No, I'm very glad to see it's getting updated.
Yeah. The upshot for Foundry authors is that the detail consoles that we have are getting these new textures. Because, as you say, if they apply it to one, it applies it to all.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've gone in and actually tested this, put some of these consoles down on the map, and they've got the new textures on them.
Cool.
A lot of the Federation interiors are that same amalgam of the ones with the new textures and the ones with the old. But hopefully once they get that all updated, that consistency issue will go away. But it certainly makes for very different looking interiors, I can tell you. But it also, it matches more with TNG era Star Trek, matches with our new user interface. So I think once they get those issues done, I think it'll be better.
Now, do you know if the ultimate goal is something like what they've got on the Odyssey bridge?
I'm not as familiar with that bridge.
I mean, minus the holographicness, but no, the Odyssey bridge textures specifically are just gorgeous. They have the nice yellow based outcars. They look very close to what was in the or like in late TNG movies.
Oh, cool. I don't have that.
Yeah, it might be what they're going for. Yeah. Same, and I've never actually used it in Foundry. So. But anyway, let's move on. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, there was also one other bit of news, right?
Which is?
The G&T show interview with Captain Gecko.
Yeah, I mentioned the thing with the mission tagging system was something that he mentioned. The other specific one that he mentioned as coming was a follow author function. So you can follow authors and it will update you when the author has published something new. That one has not appeared on Tribble yet, but I think it'd be a great addition. He mentioned that there were, I think his words were, a dozen or so other features that they were looking at either between now and Season 9 or with Season 9. And he said that they weren't ready to say which ones yet.
Well, I mean, he made a couple of other comments that I found really interesting in this. First off, and this is like my favorite quote out of the interview, and this is a quote, he says, "The goal is to get the damn thing out of beta."
Yes, that was an interesting quote, wasn't it?
Yeah, I loved it. But no, I mean, going into kind of things that he had said, he mentioned that this is kind of part of a broader push on their part to go back and take care of all of these languishing systems. I think he also mentioned crafting as one example of one of those systems. And he didn't say it, but I'm going to imagine that down the road this also might apply to PvP. So don't expect it soon.
Let's hope.
But I mean, yeah, but I like the fact that he was specifically gone into this, that they're trying to go back and take care of all of these old systems that basically look bad for the game because they haven't been updated in who knows how long.
Yeah, I mean,
so, yeah.
I really don't understand why they didn't update crafting when they added Mark 12 stuff to the game. They modified crafting so that it now consumes the lithium, but they didn't give you the ability to craft Mark 12 stuff. And there's also the fact that the Aegis set, it has the stats of, I forget whether it's Mark 10 or Mark 11 gear.
It's Mark 10. That's pretty much what all crafting is. I mean, that's a whole other topic, though.
There's several of those areas of the game that have definitely lagged behind, your PvE areas. So, and Foundry is one of them.
But I think that I think what they're doing now is, I mean, up until now, especially between like Season 5 and Legacy of Romulus, the push was to try and solidify the core aspects of the game. So they were tackling endgame, especially. They did a bunch of tweaking up of early levels. And you can go back to like earlier interviews, like a year or so ago, and hear them talking about them focusing on these core aspects where they felt that they were losing players in the process. And so up till that, and I think I kind of consider Legacy of Romulus the finishing move to prove that Star Trek Online was back on track. Because, I mean, before Season 5, we had this massive the content drought. And it was a really tough time for both the team and the game. And so, for me, Legacy Romulus and getting Legacy Romulus out the door kind of proved that things were back on track after having that period of languish. So now what they're doing, at least from my opinion, now what they're doing is going back and cleaning up. Now that they've got the core solidified, they're going back and cleaning up all of the ancillary aspects. And this is going to take a long time. I mean, even Foundry alone is looking at 6 months of updates. But I mean, and then crafting is probably, we may not see crafting till after that, and PvT down the road. So I mean, you're talking probably over a year, maybe 2 years of just spending extra time just cleaning up some of these ancillary systems. But I mean,
just want to know what PvT is.
PvT?
Sorry. Yeah, you said PvT instead of PvP.
Right.
So
I
I was
to
like,
say PvP.
what could that be? I know. I think
Player
that's
versus
absolutely
time.
what they're doing. I think
Player
that's
versus turtle.
absolutely what they're doing, though. I mean, it's anybody who can think in terms of long-term game health and what's been happening over the last year and a half can kind of see that, but too many players are just kind of focused on the now, why doesn't it work now kind of thing.
Honestly, I mean, I have never been more optimistic for the future prospects of this game.
The other interesting thing that Gecko said was that they've been spending a lot of time combating exploits.
Yeah. And I noticed that. And
so in the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, is that time they could have spent actually doing real development?
Well, he actually called it kind of wasting time.
Yeah.
Dealing with that exploit.
Yeah,
so
that's kind of how he made.
Yes.
That's kind of how he made it sound. So
I mean, it's kind of out. I mean, it's kind of out of our power to stop exploits.
No.
So, I mean,
people will make them
go around
no matter
saying this is our fault or thinking Gecko's blaming us or something. But at the same token, I mean, it's something they had to deal with first. I mean, it was a more immediate problem.
Oh, absolutely. But anyway,
I mean, good stuff happening.
Anyway, why don't we move it along to what we've been working on? So, I know Hippie probably has a lot to say here.
No,
he's been working on a lot of different things, right?
I can't get focused on one project, and I guess what's going to happen is whatever I end up. Exploration has been really inspiring me recently, and so has the original series. So I'm working on a couple of things that have to do with exploration in the original series, and right now I'm just having a blast tweaking little pieces of redressing Earth's space dock and making a lower level that I think is working out really quite well. So that's really all I have to say about what I'm working on, because like I've said before, every time I talk about what I'm working on, something happens and I stop working on it. So all I'll say is I'm working on exploration type of missions right now. So
that's kind of where I was before Purity started, is I just had about 4 or 5 different projects that I was working on completely aimlessly and not getting any of them done.
See, I just think we're going to have downtime coming up, and whatever one of these 4 things that I'm working on right now gets the most brain power, gets the most writing done on it, is what I'll work on when we finally get the editor back, however long that is later. So.
Well, I can tell you, this is what I've been working on. Obviously, since Purity came out, I've been sort of, in that post-mission time where it's like, okay, what else do I do now? I can work on anything I want to. I have, no direction. But your brainstorming the other night about original series subjects got me working on a mission where it's going to be a Romulan mission for Romulan captains, and they're going to go and encounter a Federation task force from the TOS era that's been catapulted forward in time.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I like the the proof of series, or whatever you guys want to call what Rogue and now you have been doing with
Yeah.
Google Docs.
This is, and I'm going to sort of pass this along to other authors as a great thing to do, is, you know, sort of write up a synopsis. You know, you're working on a mission idea. If you want people to weigh in on it, you know, see if you're going in a cool direction. Write up a synopsis, put it in Google Docs. You know, you could even, you know, you can make it as detailed or as not detailed as you like, and then, you know, just show it to people. Show it to other authors, you know, post in the forum, say, hey, is this a cool idea, or is no one going to like this? Is it going to be really stupid? Or, you know, what suggestions do you have? Help me brainstorm. Things like that. I know you've done one and Rogue has done one.
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I did one is usually actually I don't, it's kind of dumb to say it, but I don't think as much as I normally do. I mean, I'm thinking more about this upcoming one that I'm doing instead of what I normally do, which is like, I'll come up with a hook and then I'll build the mission around the hook. Now it's like, darn it, I have this like really plot heavy idea. I have to actually map it out or else I'm going to forget. So that's why I did it for mine, but it's kind of fun to throw an early mission concept around and pray that other authors you show it to don't steal your work, you know.
There is always
I'm kidding.
there is always that issue.
Yeah.
We just hope that we're an honorable bunch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've actually had significant issues with that because a lot of the time I'll just make up things that go when I'm making a mission, and that's part of the reason why some of my missions have been left unfinished is because I didn't plot it out ahead of time, and then when I got around to it, I'm like, okay, now what?
I definitely outline just about every mission I do. I just rarely show it to people.
Well, I usually come up with some sort of a vague outline-ish type thing. It's just that it usually doesn't have enough detail to actually be usable for writing the mission.
Well, it's funny we're talking about outlines, because people make missions very, very differently. And I know when we were first developing the Purity series, and we'd given out the mission assignments to our authors, I was like, okay, you know, everybody, you know, not directing, but suggesting that everybody post their mission outlines in our Dropbox folder. And 2 or 3 of the other authors were like, I don't ever do outlines.
that was definitely
what does an outline look like?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, a lot of people outline in excruciating detail, whereas some people like me are just like, I just build in the editor. What is a spell check? You know, what is, you know?
Well, my approach to creating missions varies depending on what I'm doing at the time that I write the mission. Because when I did Diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant, I actually did do a reasonably detailed outline of certain parts of it. I mean, especially with the parts where you have to run around the map and talk to the various Vortas. Because I definitely had to carefully plan out which Vorta you're going to talk to about what. And, well, that led in... I actually kind of halfway ditched some of the work that I did planning that because, I don't know, I guess I just kind of didn't have enough time to do it exactly the way I wanted to.
Well, and the other part of that, of course, is don't be afraid to just completely ditch your outline if parts of it aren't working for you.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know what this outline thing is that you all speak of. I really don't.
Maybe I'll post an example.
I know what sticky notes, tape, and my wall look like, and sometimes I'll put I'll make like a big arrow on a piece of paper, especially when I'm doing time travel, that points back and forth between sticky notes on my wall.
This sounds like the kind of wall that, you know, the police find when they're investigating like a serial killer or a, terrorist or something.
It's actually a corkboard, so.
Found the author?
Oh, well, corkboard indicates sanity.
The thing is, though, is that they put that thing in movies because people do that in real life, too.
See, when the police come to Hippie's house, ooh, I don't know about that.
It lasts for all of, a couple of weeks while I get the dialogue and stuff typed into boxes, so.
Well, people build in very, very different ways. I'll tell you, I'm working on a concept for another mission that is going to require a lot of planning, because okay, I've been watching this Canadian TV show called Flashpoint, and it's all about the special police unit that goes in and, you know, when there's a standoff or something involving a shooter or situations like that, they try and negotiate the person down and try and get a peaceful resolution. Or, you know, as an alternative, go in, you know, full tactical and take them down. So I've been thinking, you know, how about a hostage situation? How could I do that where I could have multiple outcomes? You could either be able to talk the person down or send in your guys to kill them, all while they've got hostages, and have those multiple outcomes, and obviously, you know, have the complete disaster outcome where everybody's dead, have the, you know, talk them down, take them into custody one, or have the successful tactical entry one. And that's going to take a lot of planning.
You're going to have like one objective.
It's going to take a lot of planning in all your objects.
But I think it's doable.
Yeah, there's no reason why that isn't doable on one map.
It's going to be tricky. Oh yeah, it's all going to be one map.
Yeah.
I was going to say, yeah, it's got to be on one map.
It's all going to have to be done outside of the objective window, or most of it. But that's sort of one that's kind of far in the future. So let's see. Green Dragoon, what have you been working on?
There's no in the future for me, only Midas. More specifically, this week I've been I have been working on Map 8, but I've kind of been forced to put that aside for the moment because Season 8 is coming. And with Season 8 means downtime. And I really don't want to spend my downtime idle, so I have been copying dialogue out of my mission into a Word doc, trying to get as much as I can in before the downtime hits, which I've still got a lot to do and not very much time to do it. But yeah, I need to finish up that, and hopefully then, while we're sitting around waiting, twiddling our thumbs waiting for the Foundry to come back, I can still be productive getting the rest of the dialogue worked out, polishing dialogue I've already written. I know there's a number of areas where I want to polish things up. That's kind of been what I've been up to in a nutshell.
Well, it's certainly a productive use of downtime.
Yeah.
I hope so, because I've had some very unproductive previous downtimes.
It's true. I mean, you know what? Half the time, what I do is I say that, oh yeah, downtime, I'm going to get all kinds of writing done. And then I end up just playing the actual rest of the game.
I'm pretty sure that's the only time that, I was going to say, that's pretty much the only time when the Starbase UGC official fleet actually progresses is when there's Foundry downtime.
Yep.
So, yes, I need.
Well, I'll tell you though, we got a lot of progression out of the Crystalline Entity event.
It's true.
Did pretty well for us. All right, Mark, have you been in the Foundry much lately?
I've logged in to tinker with things, but not much beyond that, unfortunately. I haven't had a lot of time to last.
That is the thing about the Foundry, it is a time commitment. Or it can be, anyway. Rogue, have you been working on any missions?
Yes, so I think last time I was on this podcast, I said something about how I was thinking about like storyboarding out a mission, and I actually didn't make any progress on that.
Well, that was right before Purity started, I think.
I know. I have no excuse. I had this general idea of what I wanted to do, but I just couldn't find I just wasn't happy with the pitches I was making. But then Purity happened, and I got carried away with that. But since Purity ended, I went back to that mission idea and totally revamped it. And that was the one I was kind of I had the outline built and was kind of showing it around, seeing what people thought. So I think I finally have a thing I want to go with. But then of course the downtime is coming, so I guess I'll just be making super detailed outlines of it, so I don't have to think at all when the actual editor comes back up. I'll just be building it, and then off and away it goes.
It's a good place to be at.
Indeed.
Well, I for one liked your idea that I saw on your Google Doc. I think it was a pretty good one. All right, let's see. We got a couple of mission reviews tonight, not too many. I'll go ahead and do mine here. I played 2 missions. I played Survival Must Be Earned by Malise. This is his, and it's too bad I didn't play this for when he was on the show last week, but This is his Klingon Shakespeare. This is the Klingon version of Romeo and Juliet. Probably no need to tell you all how that one goes. Most of you are, and it helps if you do at least know a little bit about the story or have read the play before or even seen the movies. A couple of different movies of those.
Story. Is it a happy ending?
Yes. Yes, it is. As long as you're not Romeo or Juliet. But in any case, he does follow the story. You kind of take the part of, I'm not sure if this is a part that's in the play or not. I'd have to go back and look. It's been a long time. But you sort of an outside observer, interacting with some of the events and sort of witnessing others. He takes a lot of detail, and in almost every map, you get the opportunity to access, he calls it, a lore singer, like we have in the first city. So he's got, biographies of all of the houses and all of the characters there for you, should you want them, on each map. It's a pretty cool thing to do, I thought. Especially because there's so many players in this particular story. Let's see. The dialogue was pretty well done. I mean, I could tell it was Shakespeare derived, but more understandable to modern audiences and Klingonized, you might say, with Trek references, calling swabbling people pack of Ferengi, things like that. I thought it was maybe a tad too dense and stilted in some places, but I could always understand what was going on, so that wasn't a problem. They still talked in a very old-fashioned way, maybe even more so than what we see traditionally from Klingons. If he had said it in, say, if this was a couple hundred years ago, Klingon culture, I think that would be a great idea. So that way, they talk old-fashioned because they're old-fashioned Klingons. Let's see. One of the other things was he had really cool-looking city maps, Klingon cities. I thought that was very well done, just using the Klingon buildings that we have access to. So that's definitely...
Are there enough Klingon buildings to make a believable city?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's a lot more buildings than people think. Great Cardassian buildings, Vulcan buildings. You can make really good cities out of those.
That's actually something I've been thinking about is, because I know Cask made one, like a city for his Purity mission. And
yes, very similar construction to that.
Sure.
I would say.
Cool. Yeah, I think making an alien city, I think Kirkfat did a challenge for that a while back too, and that's something that I've never had to do before because I love being on ships and stuff like that, but any kind of city construction has always mystified me, but.
Yeah, I haven't made one in a while, but I was working on one to expand my Romulan Senate map. I should get back to that someday. Because I wanted to have the city outside the Senate as well before you go into the Senate building. But it's definitely one that I would recommend everybody play. Shakespeare just seems to fit really well with Klingons. I always describe, I've said it before on the show, but I always describe Klingons as Shakespeare as read by Vikings. Or samurai. Either way. I was watching a samurai movie the other night and I was like, wow, these could be Klingons. And it definitely inspired me. I want to keep working on my own Shakespeare, or get back to working on my own Shakespeare Klingon adaptation. So hopefully I will get back to that in the future. The other mission I played was Uncharted by Kilo Ace. And actually, that reminds me, that is not actually the name he goes by in-game. Quick look this up for everybody. Aceman97 is actually the name that he goes by. That's the @handle that's on his mission. So, this mission is all about going beyond the Galactic Rim to look for a ship that, previous ship that went beyond the Galactic Rim on a science mission, hasn't been heard from. You go to try and find it. This is the USS Luna. You encounter the Borg out past the rim. I wanted to compliment him on his interior map. It was an assimilated Federation ship. he used the generic map, the generic Federation interior, which honestly I would not have used because it's really hard to make that map feel not huge and empty. But as it does, he did a good job with it. One of the things I wanted to compliment him on that map was he had a progression. It was supposed to be a partially assimilated Federation ship. And he had a progression of Borg objects. So as you went through the map, you got more and more and more assimilated. I thought he did very well with that. It might have been better served using one of the other interiors that we have. I think you could get the same effect and it would look better because we have some better looking Federation interiors in there and you could have the same thing. I won't spoil it too much as we usually go, but there's one thing when he had a point in the mission where you're defending the USS Luna against Borg attacks, and I think he must have used an NPC group because it moves around and I think it tries to help you, but in the story it's supposed to be sort of helpless and they're working on getting they're working on the ship and you have to buy them time. So I think if you replace that with just a regular old NPC contact, it'd be fine and it would stay put. Let's see. I liked all the he had a lot of call outs to First Contact, which is great because that's one of my favorite of the movies. So it's a good one, and if you're looking to fight the Borg, that's a good one to go to. And I believe, you look here, yeah, I think he intends it to be part of a series. So I kind of hope that he gets those done because there's nothing worse than seeing a part 1 and you never get part 2. Dragoon.
Yeah, I know, that's just horrible.
See what you did there.
Clever, huh? Clever. All right, Hippie, I think you were going to at least mention a mission, maybe?
Yeah, I played the End of Purity. Of course, I was also a tester on it, but there was a lot that changed between when I tested it and when it went live, but because at least one of our
based
panelists...
on some of your feedback.
Yeah, I was going to say at least one of our panelists hasn't played it yet, so I'm not going to talk about that one. But I played your other new mission. Cold Winds is the name of it. So I'm going to review a Drogon mission. The mission was... at the end of the mission, I just wanted to say I hate you for making me hate Star Trek V less.
Wait, how is that possible?
Yeah, I was going to ask. That
right?
seems crazy.
I know.
That was my goal, and apparently I succeeded.
I don't want to go into it too much because I think saying much of anything about it will spoil a great deal of it. It's got a very good kind of spooky feel to it, and definitely a Halloween mission as you intended. But
released it on.
It released it on Halloween. But it also has it doesn't have to just be a Halloween mission. It's a very good, slightly spooky mission that plays on some of the tropes storytelling wise that they used in Star Trek V and does it better than they did. So it made it fun and made me, it doesn't make me appreciate that horrible movie, where Captain Kirk falls in love with a mountain, any less. I still don't really like that film, but this mission definitely, from a storytelling perspective, uses what that film gave us and what parts of lore that film added to in such a way that it makes it really, really enjoyable, actually. There's a lot of, when I played it, I know that you've made adjustments since then. There were a couple of, I know you were trying to get it released on Halloween exactly, so there were a couple of places that you had missed a few, like, an Interact was still named, Interact 01 kind of thing, but I know you've gone back and,
I should say, I built the whole thing essentially while I was waiting for all the testers to play Purity. So it was a very truncated building process.
Yeah, but the maps are fun. The combat was balanced and fair, and
I have actually upped that a bit since you played it. I was thinking about the way to put this. I've added a freaking lot more zombies.
awesome. That's really cool. But yeah, it's a fun mission. I really enjoyed it, and for everybody whose response was just, how did you make Star Trek? How did you make 5, The Search for God? A less horrible experience, and Drogon managed it. If you hate Star Trek 5 like I do, go play Drogon's mission. So that's what I'd have to say about it.
No, thank you very much.
Drogon's next trick, he'll make you actually like Into Darkness.
That's impossible. Can't happen.
No, it isn't.
Can't be done.
All
Just
right.
play his next mission. He'll have you convinced it was the best plot ever.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. So I fixed Star Trek 5. What else can I fix? I can fix Threshold, maybe.
Maybe.
You
Ending to Enterprise?
you cannot fix a thing that every track writer is pretty much dismissed from canon.
Well, that's the thing about me is that I dismiss no Star Trek. So
That's the thing is,
I'm interested in all of it.
may not like it, but can't pick your canon.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I had a little bit of an opinion on the Cold Winds. So you released it on Halloween, right?
Yes.
So
Almost no one played it on Halloween. It's got 3 reviews.
I played it
that's
on
because they're all busy handing out candy.
Hippie might have been the only one. Maybe Zorbane.
Well, that's the thing about like seasonal specific missions. So, for example, I know there's another Halloween themed mission by this guy, like H-Bomb 420. I think he does a Scarefest something mission. But he released his at the beginning of October, so that way you have the build up to the holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So
This is true. Of course, it wasn't done by then. So.
Well, you know what?
I barely started.
I'm going to say this in Drogon's defense. Purity 6 was awesome.
yes, I gotta agree. But yeah, I mean, it's as far because it's one of those things, where it's as soon as Christmas is over, they take down all the decorations, and nobody's psyched about it anymore.
It's very true.
So I don't know. If you had all the time in the world, you could have released it.
Well,
I'm glad you didn't drop Purity for
I'm
that.
certainly not taking it down between Halloweens.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just going to leave it up there like all my other missions. So.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's something that this H-Bomb 420 guy does, is he takes it down after Halloween and then, fixes it up and releases it again at October. It'd be a good discussion topic.
Maybe that's...
This year, apparently, he added a whole new section to his haunted house. So yeah, I think that's what happens.
That could be a good discussion topic, definitely.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Maybe in, holiday time you can have that discussion topic.
Christmas-themed missions.
There's no Christmas in Star Trek. Oh wait, yes
Don't
there is.
tempt me. Seriously, don't tempt me.
Santa was really an Iconian.
Oh god.
I was gonna say, there was a Christmas scene in Generations, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Generations.
There is Christmas in Star Trek.
Oh no, I hate you guys.
Hear the wheels
We're
turn
giving
from
him
there.
more ideas.
Now, I don't know that Christmas really extends beyond
Right.
Earth, but it does exist.
You mean you never played the Founder Mission, A Klingon Christmas Carol?
Of course I did.
I confess I have not. I know of it. It's a spotlight, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Isn't there also
Wonderful.
a Christmas Carol coming out or something?
Oh.
Could be. Interesting. All right. So let's move it on to our tech topic for the evening. Green to Green.
So this week, the topic is actually kind of inspired by something I saw on the forums. We had a guy coming on who wanted to do branching maps. So you make a choice, and that determines which map loads next. And of course, we can't do that. We can't even. In fact, as far as I know, Stowe in general can't do that. But I mean, he was really bummed out about not being able to do this, and apparently it was enough that he sounded like, I mean, he was just going to drop whatever idea he had and not do anything. So I kind of wanted to focus this tech topic on how we deal with Foundry limitations. Because I am a firm believer that just because something can't be done in the Foundry, A, doesn't mean that we can't actually do it, and B, doesn't mean that we should stop trying to do it or allow it to kind of halt our mission. So obviously this can be a very broad topic, so I'm kind of just going to open it up and see, I mean, what are some examples of you guys dealing with running into a Foundry limitation, and how did you deal with them?
Well, in a sense, I ran into, in fact, I very deliberately ran into that same limitation of, how do you do multiple endings to a mission? How do you make player choices really matter? I very intentionally did that because I wanted to say, okay, can I do this? And this was years ago. And so that's when I sort of hit upon that idea of using triggers to do things outside of the objective window. And I mean, obviously I wasn't the first person to do this, but I thought to myself, how can I make the player make a choice and have it matter through the rest of the map and matter through onto the next map and even to the ending dialogue, have the ending dialogue be different. And so, I just kind of sat down and figured out, okay, so if I make the only objective here to get to a reach marker at the end, that means I can, through dialogue tell the player, okay, you have to make the choice to interact with this console or not. And that spawns enemies or not, depending on the choice. And then on the next map, they ask you, what choice did you make? Cleverly disguised in dialogue. Hopefully cleverly. And, based on that, enemies either spawn or friendlies spawn in that next map, it's a space map. And then at the end, the guy asks you, how did it go? And you say, I did this or I did this. And based on that, the guy either says, okay, we're going to give you some medals for that one, or says, you're risking court-martial by doing that. So, I mean, there's ways to do multiple endings, which is part of what that guy wants. It isn't easy, but I think one of the things that when I'm responding to people on the forum when they ask questions like that is, in the Foundry, there's always a lot of, you can't do that, but. They say you can't technically do something, but here's a way you can essentially fake it so the player doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
Well, a good example of that is one of Pendra's missions, where he made it so that the vast majority of the mission takes place on a single map, and depending on one of the choices you make, it's you either start on the surface of a moon-like planetoid, or you start on a planet-side colony, and you go through the mission, and it plays as differently as you would expect based on one of those two starting locations. You end up in the same place eventually, but you have those two starting locations to deal with.
Yeah, no, I was actually thinking of that one when I was posting in this thread. Unfortunately, I cannot remember the title.
I feel like you're looking at two different. I mean, this topic is kind of two different issues. There's the how do I get the player to experience, to give them the illusion of choice during a map, and how do we get their choices to carry over between maps? And those are two very separate problems. Yeah. So as long as you identify them as what you need to overcome, there are ways to do it.
Well, that's a good point. Is the very first thing is identify exactly the issue you want to overcome.
Exactly.
And then if you can't sort of suss out a way to do it, my advice would be post it on the forums. Say, I know we can't do this exactly. How do I get around it? Is there a way around it? Because we have some very, very creative people in the community here. People like Pendra, for instance, who know this trigger work and they can, get them thinking. And I bet you they'll come up with ways around things that you might not have thought of yourself.
I've worked around a couple of issues by kind of disguising the nature of my objectives. So, for instance, I will have a case where you have a objective that says something like investigate this console, but in fact it's really a kill objective, and the player can't tell the difference. But you can kind of trigger it out and then have the dialogue say something about your objectives changed once you've gotten ambushed. And kind of do fun little things like that. Play around with the player's expectations. You can also keep objectives vague. So it's just, I've seen it as vague as Solve Tree.
Yeah, Kendra did that one.
Yeah.
The only actual objective on that map from the storyboard standpoint was it was actually a reach marker, I think it was. Or it was interaction with the console, one of the two.
And there's certainly no reason you have to label your objectives as exactly what they are.
Yeah. You also have the option of whether to show reach markers on the minimap at all. And you can sometimes use that to disguise the true nature of objectives.
I think the reach marker with the circle turned off is the best way, only because if you use it like an object interact, if they scan, it'll point them right at it. Especially on a space map, that probably isn't what you want.
Well, actually, in
unless you want that
situation, it's actually a good thing because, that's one thing I did in one of my missions is that I make it so you have to find these 4 consoles in order to unlock the path to continue the mission. But, if you didn't have the ability to scan for the consoles, that would make completing the mission a lot more challenging. Because I actually made an effort to hide them where people would have to look for them. In case you're wondering how well I hid them, I found this one spot where there's this pool of water that's about 12 feet deep. I put one of the consoles at the base of the tree in the bottom of this pool of water where I don't think you would ever see it just walking around looking.
Of course, when you hide things, you have to be prepared for people to miss them.
Well,
and they may not rate you very well if they do.
Well, there's something you can do in that case. You can use the beacon, because the beacons will actually put a icon on at least one of them will. We'll put an icon on the minimap.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use that. And it also gives them a visual representation. So you can have a reach marker hidden, and then reveal it later by placing a beacon down, or having it appear. So here's another question. How do you guys deal with Foundry limitations that you can't work around? Have you ever had an instance where you just can't do what you wanted to do originally, and you have to deal with it somehow? How do you guys deal with that?
Oh yeah, plenty.
My missions of Vast Legacy, I originally wanted the player to go to the planet that the Guardian of Forever is on and actually talk to the Guardian of Forever. But there's no asset that resembles the Guardian of Forever, and no way couldn't come up with a way to properly simulate talking to the Guardian of Forever. So I rewrote it to have, instead of talking to the Guardian of Forever, you talk to a Section 31 operative.
Yeah, it could be just as simple as changing around the character to somebody that you can put in there.
Mm-hmm.
Ironically, that's something that came up on the forums this week too. Somebody was wanting to put the Guardian of Forever in their mission, and we don't have the asset, and it's actually, the asset is removed, because we have, the one in game, has a whole map that has Guardian of Forever as a little part of it. It's actually removed from that map in the Foundry.
Yep.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I heard there's some sticky
licensing issues, I think.
Probably.
Because that belongs to Harlan Ellison, isn't it?
Don't know.
I didn't know that any part of that was actually owned by someone outside
If it is, it's probably the writer. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think we encouraged people to make their own. I mean, Kirkvat made his own Guardian.
Yeah.
It's not the Guardian forever. He named it the Guardian of something else, but similar kind of thing.
Yeah, he did a really nice job.
Yeah, he did, as I recall. It's Relics. Is that the one that one's in?
I think so.
I think so.
I think that's it, yeah.
So, I don't know. When I was first writing missions for the Foundry, I started writing and outlining before I knew what the limitations were going to be, because it was while the Foundry was still on Redshirt and not really, there was an NDA, so nobody knew anything. They were just putting out there that this mission builder was coming. We had no idea how it was going to work. So, I don't know, I just kind of did what I just came up with a story and started outlining some things, and when I finally got in there, there was definitely a lot of it that I couldn't do, or a lot of it that I had to change to match how the Foundry is. I can give you a specific one. When we first had the Foundry, you could not despawn an NPC. You couldn't make him disappear. Now you can, obviously. It used to be you couldn't. So I wanted you to go to this Romulan outpost and have a conversation with this person who is an enemy. Have a conversation with them, and they, say, ha ha ha, you can't catch me, and they beam out.
Okay.
But at the time, I couldn't have them disappear. Now, obviously, you still can't have them beam out with an animation, but you can have them disappear. So I had to figure out how to redo that confrontation because I didn't want there to be a fight yet. So I had to figure out how to redo that. So what I did was, you go through this map, you talk to various Romulans and say you're looking for this person. Finally, you find them, and they say, you can't touch me here because I have all these thugs, and a bunch of thugs beam in behind them, a bunch of Romulan thugs. And then the Romulan commander of the station, who's supposed to be this, sort of, honorable by the book officer, he beams in with a bunch of security guys and says, there will be no fighting on my watch. And he tells you to leave. So you beam up, and then you can have a fight later. So, it was a whole interesting thing to get around just that little limitation of, I can't make this person disappear during the conversation.
Necessity breeds invention.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does.
Well, another one of the really old Foundry limitations that I had to work around in the past was the one that made it so that you could not place enemies on a map without making them part of a kill objective. That one was a kind of a pain for me, because one of my missions, I wanted you to have, you're sneaking into a Romulan colony, your Federation, and it's set in the TOS era. And, this is shortly after the Neutral Zone Treaty had taken effect. So, the Romulans would be extremely unhappy to see Federation personnel. And so, I can't really visualize you being able to walk in and not get shot at immediately. But I didn't want you to have to make it so that you had to do it. But, I rewrote the mission so that, at least in one of the older iterations of the mission, that is, I've changed it since then, but I rewrote it so that the objective was to stun the guards at the colony so that you could talk to the colony governor instead of, just walking in and talking to the guy, which wouldn't make sense, or killing the guards, because you're there to help the Romulans, not attack them.
That's a limitation right there, is that we can't... Okay, so in Neverwinter, you can fight an NPC until it gets down to a certain hit point level, and then it will become friendly. So you essentially fight it and disable it, you don't kill it. We don't have that in Star Trek Online, even though it'd be great to have, because of course, how many times in the shows, and even in the game, in a few places, do you disable a ship rather than destroy it? That's one I've had to get around.
Well, one example is when you fight Karukan in Boldly Bay Road, you basically beat the guy to death, usually with the Bat'leth. Or, well, if you're me, you do it with the Bat'leth. But, and then instead of dying, the guy gives you this speech about how you're going to have to take on his flagship and beams out. While I'm standing there trying to hack him to death with a Bat'leth, he just like, nah, and then beams out.
That was another one that I had to get around in another part of that initial 5-part series that I made, because I wanted to disable a ship and then board it. So how I did that was I had a little bit of dialogue before the fight that said, let's try and disable him. Then we did the fight. You destroy the ship, and then your officer, you tell your officer, what did you do? I said, disable it. And the officer says, there's no way that last hit should have destroyed it, sir. That I think they set off that explosion themselves and cloaked. And then you do a scan, you figure out that they didn't get very far before their cloak failed because they were heavily damaged. So then there's a damaged ship off on another part of the map that you go and find and board. So essentially I have you destroy the ship and not really destroy it as far as the story is concerned.
Mm-hmm. No, I had a fight in part 2 I've been working on where you're shooting up some people I can't go into. But the idea is that you don't actually kill them. That you that you're basically trying to stun them. I wanted to make it very clear that you hadn't killed them. So what I did was I had you do the fight. You had to shoot them. And once you'd won the fight, I brought up a pop-up dialogue. And while that pop-up dialogue is there, it spawns in a new group of them all flailing on the floor. And kind of use the pop-up dialogue to kind of obscure your view. So
yeah, that's something I've seen a lot of authors do, and I think somebody just did it in the Purity series too. I think it might have been Zorbane in the very first one.
One limitation that used to exist in the Foundry that I worked around in diplomacy in the Gamma Quadrant was that it used to be that interacting with an object, you couldn't set triggers based on whether someone clicked the yes button or the no button. So I made it so that when you interacting with the first object, you have an explanation of what the second object does, and then it makes it so that you can interact with the second object. Then it leaves you with the choice of whether to interact with the second object to trigger something, or to leave it alone and not trigger something. In case you're wondering, this is the scene where you have this big force field that seals off the main power room in the Vorta research base. And when you're inside it, you can walk up to the force field and attempt to disable the force field, which does actually work, but the catch is that the Vorta Enlist and several of her assistants will attempt to kill you if you do succeed in disabling the force field.
So I'm hearing a common theme that very often the solution for a lot of Foundry limitations is storytelling, which I love. Which I love that very often that is the answer, is, a way to rewrite something that you've done that, I hate having to rewrite things, obviously, but that the solution comes out of our creativity, and that, sorry, I like that.
I think I've actually had, I think you're right, and I think I've had some times where it's actually made it better, made the mission better than what I wanted to do originally.
Don't apologize, that's definitely true.
I mean, it forces you to, it really forces you to stretch your imagination and your mind, and, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say there, I guess.
Well, some people become too attached to their original vision. To the point where they're inflexible when they need an obstruction.
Yeah, I think I would encourage everybody to be flexible. I mean, there's gonna be a way to tell your story, even if you have to alter just a little part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I will say that nothing I have ever come up with has been as good the first time around I mean, usually it gets much better in the subsequent changes and polishes and attempts to get around limitations. Because especially when you can integrate a limitation into your story in a very beautiful way, it becomes this incredible thing.
I have to agree.
And I think final piece of advice was what kind of what I said earlier, which is, if you can't figure it out yourself, ask.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've always kind of seen Foundry limitations like being inside a big, like a big office where they've got those like concrete pillars in the middle of the room, and the concrete pillars are ugly and nobody likes to look at them. But that doesn't mean that you can't build around them and build your constructs in such a way, building off of those limitations and bring it around into something incredible.
Yeah.
And I may have just butchered that metaphor, but
a little, but
hopefully you can kind of see
that. We won't one-star you for butchering metaphors. This time.
The Drogon won't.
I mean, oftentimes you can, especially as you get more used to dealing with limitations, you start to see ways that you can utilize limitations to your advantage.
Well, why don't we move it along? I wanted to bring on Rogue Enterprise tonight because he was our project coordinator for the Purity series. And I wouldn't call that necessarily a leadership position because as much as I encouraged him to make unilateral decisions, he refused. So
I don't think anyone was encouraging that.
I was. I kept telling
I was as well.
I kept telling you just decide things. But, I kind of wanted to bring him on. We're going to do a few of these over a couple different of the Foundry podcasts that are out there. But to do sort of a postmortem, talk about the things that worked, things that didn't, what we learned, what we can pass on. So I think I'll begin by talking about Part 6 a little bit. Part 6 came out, actually published it last Sunday, but it actually went up for Spotlight on Tuesday. Let's see, currently it's up to 1,282 reviews, and it's been incredibly well received. Been consistently 96% approval rating, and what I consider approval rating is 4 or 5 stars. And that's just unheard of in the Foundry. It's currently the highest rated Foundry mission there is out of all of them. Somebody actually finally knocked off Avenging Resolution by A.J. Stoner, which is an incredible mission. And I think what I take away from that is that and I posted this on the forums, is that there's a market for this sort of thing, for these big story-based mission series.
Well, see, that's one thing that I keep hearing on the forums is that people want more content, more missions to play through, and don't consider the sheer amount of time that it would take to make enough missions that people would have to have one new mission to play every week. So, I often recommend that people try playing Foundry missions, and then, there's the inevitable people that are like, well, but Foundry missions suck. Really? No, they don't.
Some people think of it as, fan fiction, whereas the official content is whatever, canon.
Yeah.
Canon-ish.
It's all
being
fiction.
paid to make it is sort of this kind of barrier in people's minds, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But, in reality that, there's hundreds and thousands of great Foundry missions that are exactly like the Cryptic missions, that are out there for people to play.
Cases.
Yeah.
Just as good in many cases.
So there's definitely a market for this.
I mean, you were saying about how, it'd be so difficult to, have official Cryptic content come out once per week like the old-timey featured episode series used to be. And it's totally right. So I was looking at my calendar right now, and we started making these 6 missions in June. So that's 5 months ago.
And there had been work, kind of the work done on the idea before then, right?
Yes.
I think.
Yes, I'm saying we officially started
especially.
work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we basically we were generating the ideas during June, and then at the end of June we actually started working on it, and from then it took 5 months just to come out with 6 episodes.
Oh yeah.
So you can imagine, like,
I mean, when did we have that first story meeting? Because I think that was the first one that I was in on. Was when we were just sort of brainstorming about the story.
Yeah, I think it was like the last week of June.
Mm-hmm. Something like that. And then we finally, had the missions. Captain P.F. Dennis took our ideas and developed the story into, it was 5 parts at that point. And then then we sort of each started volunteering to do different parts. Mm-hmm. And then we started doing the work. And then we actually added a 6th episode because we had 6 authors who wanted to do missions and only 5 missions. So
yes.
that was the genesis of Baz Eggs Part 2.
That's funny when people say, like, Part 2, it doesn't add anything. It's like, well, we did a little.
We kind of shoehorned it in a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly the word I was going to use. Yeah, shoehorning. So, and even then, I think it still works in the context of the thing. But people just have to realize. Yeah. But people just have to realize, we're just a group of guys that wanted to do something awesome and we wanted to be inclusionary. So.
Yeah.
That's why we got that in there.
Obviously, we couldn't involve every author ever, but, we had more authors than we had missions, and we're like, well, we don't want to leave them out, so
yeah, exactly.
let's add a mission. So Paul went off and wrote it, and ironically, put in a story element that Cerberus Films had been pushing for the whole time, which is, it's all a dream.
It's all a dream, yes. I'm sure Baz is really happy about that.
He also wanted to blow up the planet, which we haven't done.
It's only a matter of time.
Yes.
You know what happens when Cerb gets his way.
So, I don't know, Rogue, how do you think it went overall?
Well, basically, this is the first, as far as we know, this is the first time anyone's done like a collaboration on a series. So I think overall, and I think Drogan, you proved this by all the patting yourself on the back you did a few minutes ago, that it all went really well.
Well, I hate to sound egotistical, but I'm just floored by the reaction to it. You go into these things thinking, okay, it's like any creative endeavor. You think maybe, okay, everybody's going to hate it. They're going to tell you it's worthless, and
sure.
The whole series has gotten its fair share of people who didn't like it.
Sure.
People who thought it wasn't worthy of the attention it was getting. But the overwhelming numbers of people who have played it have liked it, and I'm looking through these reviews, and they're all names I don't recognize. People who I assume are not Foundry authors, who are just players, who just played it. They saw the announcements about it and played it and liked it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
can't ask for any more than that.
Yeah, that's the number one indicator of how well we did was what the reviews are like, and they're all really good. Yours is amazing as far as the reviews, but they're all really good.
Truthfully, though, that sort of reaction is not in any way surprising me because of the fact that while there are a lot of people who are very vocal haters of Foundry content, I cannot say that my experiences in the game lead me to believe that is true of players in general. The vast majority of players are either apathetic to the Foundry or they like it.
Yeah, I think you're totally anything right. You see on the forums is not representative of the entire community.
So usually the loudest voices are going to be those who are the naysayers.
Angry in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, the minority tends to be the loudest because they know that otherwise no one will ever even know they exist.
It's totally
it's where
true.
People go. It's where people go to be angry. Very often. Mm-hmm. I'm not kidding.
You can see, we were talking about, certain people, no names mentioned, but, certain people are, this doesn't deserve to be, spotlit and this and that. And,
yeah, and these guys are, you're getting preferential treatment. When the first thing came out, there were people saying, it's just, the famous authors that are getting preferential treatment.
Right. Yeah, but their biggest critique is that these missions are not worthy. But you look at the star distribution on the missions, and it's like, well, I don't know if I can agree with you there because most people think it's pretty good,
pretty awesome.
Yeah,
yeah.
If it's just a popularity contest based on star ratings, we're winning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really.
But more than just getting good reviews. I mean, the purpose of this project was to basically a prototype to show that like it is possible. Just because it's hard doesn't mean nobody can do it.
Right.
And I'd say, and a secondary objective would be to like kind of Foundry awareness. So, it's a big enough project to get Brand Flakes to post about it and blah blah blah. So,
and I think that shows that Brand Flakes is willing to be involved and willing to help us with things like this. Because we just made the project, and I say we. I wasn't involved at this point when it was pitched to him, but we're just a bunch of people who came up with an idea, pitched it, and they went for it. The Brand Flakes went for it.
One thing that I feel the need to point out is that a comparison to something I've read on the forums is Cryptic players vote with their wallet, and which was being used in the context of whether or not people actually like the general direction that Cryptic has been taking the game in, and apparently the answer to that is yes. Well, the correlation I was thinking of is that do players as a whole like the concept of the purity theory? Well, the answer to that would apparently be yes, given the high star ratings that it's got.
Yeah, I had sort of that moment of feeling like this must be what it is like to be Cryptic. Because, you look at the feedback thread and there's people, long posts of things that are wrong with the mission, from story things that they didn't like all the way down to little mechanical things. And, some of them are absolutely excellent feedback. And people can be assured that if we get access to these missions back, we'll be going and fixing a lot of things. But if you just look at those, it's like, these missions are crap. What the hell was I thinking? I made all these kinds of mistakes, but then, and everybody hates it. But then you look at, it's like that, looking at the forums versus looking at metrics.
Sure.
Like Cryptic is probably doing. If you look at the forums, the entire player base hates the whole game, practically.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
But if you look at the metrics, people are playing all of these things that supposedly everybody hates in massive numbers. I'd be willing to say.
Sure.
The things that I find the most hilarious are the people who complain about how much time it takes to do the reputation system on 30 characters. And I'm like, wait a second. Why do you
have
need
crazy person for trying to do that on 30 characters?
Get to T5 in every rep category on 30 characters.
I've got 12 characters and I've gotten to tier 5 of rep on one guy.
Right.
For one of the reps, not even all 3.
I got one guy, 2 reps on one guy.
I don't know. Like I said, I think, there's a market for this. People like this, and I hope more people do other series like this and get that same kind of support from Brand Flakes that we did. And I hope people surpass us and make one that's even better.
Well, was there that thing that someone mentioned about the possibility of doing a KDF version?
Yeah, and I think we've heard the Gates of Sto-vo-kor guys mention that they've been thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
At least in passing.
They're so busy. I hope they can get to. I hope they have.
I hope so, because obviously they know Klingons, obviously, and there's some great Klingon authors, and there's some great authors over there. Ceridium and Gingy's over there now doing stuff with them. He's a great author. I can think of some other ones. Malise, great Klingon author. Rogue Enterprise even has some excellent Klingon missions.
My one Klingon mission. Yeah.
Just the one? Is it just the one?
Yeah, I just have the one.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I have a KDF mission myself, even though that's literally the only KDF mission I've written. Well,
I'll tell you what I'd like.
Let me rephrase. The only KDF mission I've written on the live server, and the only real KDF mission I wrote on the Tribble server got purged. So,
well, I'll tell you what I'd like to see is some more people get involved and do a KDF side mission, and then maybe a Romulan one. And I'd like to see some names that are not the authors that were on Purity. I certainly don't mind helping, but I wouldn't want to be one of the guys to make the missions, because I'd want some more names to get out there than just
I'd
the 6 people.
be willing to throw my name in the hat as one of the people to assist with that.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, I'd love to do one of the other jobs, like make the costumes or do some map building or story things, a little bit of writing, something like that. I'd love to do that part of it. Because, of course, on this one, we have, let's see, what was it? Cerberus Films made the costumes.
So yeah, let me do the breakdown.
Do the breakdown.
Yeah, sure. So there's me as let me give the who it was and what their job was. So me, Rig Enterprise, I did the coordinating. So basically, all that means is I drew up the schedule and scheduled meetings, which everyone loves.
And tried to keep everyone on task.
Yeah, keep everyone on task. Make sure I'm removing blocks and all that kind of stuff. And then there's Captain P.F. Dennis, who did the overall story behind all of the missions. And when Kirkfat had to bail, he jumped in and subbed in for that mission to make that mission. And then we had Cerberus Films, he was a costume maker and map maker, and he handled all of the PR. So for this, it was a Starbase UGC initiative, so he was kind of like the spokesperson. So he was the one that talked to Brandflix. He was the one that made the forum posts. He was the one that made the blogs. So he was like the public face.
He made the logo and put that on the screenshots, things like that.
Yeah, he organized the screenshots, asked for them. He did a really good job. So, and then aside from that, then there you have the actual authors. So that's the breakdown.
So if you were going to do this again, would you have a larger team, same size? What do you think?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it depends on the scope of the project. So even here we had, 6 missions, plus the daily. It was already hard to do, considering the communication tools we had available. So, for example, we didn't have a forum or an email list. And I think we probably really need one. That's the number one thing.
About the only thing we used was Dropbox, which is great, which is a great tool. For
but you have to go in there and look,
obviously we don't have the mission or the costume importer tool. We actually had the terrible timing to start this project right after that was gotten rid of.
That's right.
So, we had to take screenshots of the sliders and put that up for people to use. So Dropbox is great for that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely there's some tools we had that were great, like Dropbox. But other things like communication, a lot of things were on Twitter and, in the Starbase UGC chat, which is great. But, I mean, it's, so basically
not everybody's there all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So.
Well, I have my Deviant Art account that I've been using for posting slider things, but I haven't added any.
We also wanted to keep a lot of our communication private.
Yeah.
So we wanted a place where we could post those things where nobody else would see it.
Right.
So, yeah. With the Deviant Art version, you could actually make it so that you post something and you just don't mention what the picture is for, except to the people who are supposed to see it.
Interesting.
So there's a number of different sites like that you can use. I think you can make forums. It's really easy to make a free forum.
Actually, with Flickr, you can actually set it so that only people that you have in your friend list on Flickr can see a particular folder and pictures.
Right, there's lots of different places on the net that you can share private, and that's what you have to do. If you have to keep it within the group of authors that are working on the project. You need to make that happen. That I think was kind of key, because it kept it kept things, like discussion about characters and how things were happening, and like the feedback that authors would get when the test versions were played by the testers and things. It managed to keep all of that very private, which was really important, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times we couldn't even have conversations exactly about it in the our Starbase UGC chat room, because there were some of our friends who were not a part of this project.
Spies are everywhere.
And I mean, that was one of the choices we made, was to keep plot details and things like that under our hat, because we thought it'd make it more exciting for people.
Yeah, I think that's just one of the decisions, like you said, that we made with this, is we wanted to kind of go the more like publicized route. So, once we got, signed on with Brand Flakes and everything, then it became a different animal than like, say somebody else wants to do a series of missions, and maybe it's not as big of a deal for them to keep it secret or whatever. So it's just one of those decisions you have to make when you're like putting a project like this together.
I say we kind of followed the cryptic model of their featured episode series. The old ones, the old 5-parters that they used to do.
Oh yeah, because
they didn't tell you much plot details for that.
I mean, they wanted it to be a surprise, and I mean, like with the current one that they just did, they didn't even put it on Tribble before they published it live.
Mm-hmm. This is true.
So
that brings up something. Oh, go ahead, Hippie.
Go ahead. Keep talking. Go ahead.
Say that brings up something. Hippie John is actually one of the people who was involved that we forgot to mention, I think, a minute ago. Because you sort of had no title necessarily. You weren't doing any specific thing. You were just there to sort of help out whenever you were needed.
Advisor,
there you go.
Yeah, right.
I think like Hippie was originally involved, and then like in the initial plot discussions, and then just subbed out for whatever reason.
And helped with testing.
I didn't really, I was there, just didn't have much to add after the initial plot discussions. And then I was the only person, I'm pretty sure Zorbane and you did, but I was one of the first people to get all, 6 missions tested as soon as they were available, kind of thing. I was with, yeah.
That playtesting monkey.
That's something that I would sort of advise people if we were putting some advice out there, things that we learned, is to have a pool of testers.
Have a playtest monkey or two. I will say my experience in doing that, I like that I wasn't deeply involved in the actual creation of the missions and the assets and things like that, because it gave me an interesting perspective that I was looking at it from more of a player's eyes, I guess, as I was running through them, as well as
most of what we did was playtest each other's missions. Mm-hmm. So, all the people who were doing the playtesting were the ones who were authoring the other missions, or, Cerberus Films and Kirk Vat and Rogue and you. So, and I think if I was going to do this again, I would say have a larger pool of testers than that. Have a lot more people who weren't authoring the other missions come in and play, so they come in from that player's perspective. Yeah. You could even keep them in the dark about plot details or anything, say you're just a playtester and I want you to play this as if you're a player coming in for the first time with no other information. Mm-hmm. And that could be a very valuable perspective to have. Not to mention,
here's a question for you.
The more testers you have, real quick, the more testers you have, the more things you're going to catch mistakes, and that's true.
Well, I've actually noticed from my own work that I am one of those people who has a bad habit of leaving out important plot details, because it's in my mind, I know it, and I just forget that the audience doesn't know it. I mean,
and there's that outside perspective can kind of help you with those things.
Yeah,
I think that anyone thinking about going and doing something like this, it would be great to go back and listen to our discussion with Nemesis Chicken on testing.
Yeah, on testing.
He gave a very thorough breakdown of all the ways that you can test a mission, and for something as large as a featured series.
The question that I would have for you, Rogue, is obviously the way that you talked to us about how we laid out the different way that the thing was laid out, and how different authors did each different episode. If you were going to try to manage a project like this again, what would you use the same sort of layout of, for lack of a better term, jobs to do when putting it together? Would you do things differently in some way in that case at all?
It's a good question. I think by and large the structure of the team seemed to work. I think having one guy control the story is really important, just because it gives it coherence. And even then for the Purity series, some people are like, well, it's, it wasn't as coherent as they wanted it to be, but I was like, that's like the most, kind of the funniest critique, because like the story was actually just made by one dude, But,
we stuck to that pretty well. To his initial story synopsis. I mean, we changed a few little things here and there
which I think is expected.
Foundry limitations.
Yeah. I think that's totally expected. In fact, I thought we were going to run into more problems, but it actually went really smoothly. But I did
run into a couple things like at the end where you had captured a couple of the conspirators in the course of the missions, and Paul comes in after testing my mission, and he says, you didn't have one of these guys on the ship. You've actually captured this guy. He should be still in your brig. I was like, oh crap, I better add him and work him into the story somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly my point, that having him in charge of that and being one of the playtesters is like very critical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you definitely you want your story guy to be testing and playing all the missions.
Sure.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
I think the most, I kind of already mentioned it before, but it's not a structural change, but having better communication tools. So like, Kirkfat or whoever like can't be in the chat often, but he's on the forums, so having a forum would be more helpful. So like say there's a story change in the first mission, but that same minor character appears in the last mission. You can clearly see, like the itemized change of like, this guy totally dies in the first mission. I guess the guy making the last mission should, not have him.
Make sure he doesn't appear.
Yeah. But by and large, I think structurally the team worked very well. So I wouldn't change it.
So I guess I asked because the one criticism that I've seen or heard in a couple of cases in various reviews is that there was an inconsistency, but that the inconsistency wasn't in the plot of the story or something like that. And I realized that it's kind of the only pet peeve that I have with the way that the whole series worked in general, and that was, and I loved the whole thing. Every one of them got 5 stars from me, obviously, but the thing that bothered me about it was the inconsistency in the fact that Drogon writes dialogue very, very differently than Relum Time, who writes dialogue very, very differently from Bazag. From all of the authors had a very different style of dialogue. So each mission that you hit, NPCs would sound completely different because it was a different writer putting words in their mouth. And there was an inconsistency in the way that dialogue choices appeared. Like all of a sudden in episode 5, I had 3 and 4 dialogue choices for different races that had not appeared up until then. And in episode,
I confess, did not appear again when we got to episode 6, because that's just, unfortunately, that's just not how I write.
For example, like another example that occurred to me is in episode 3, Captain P.F. Dennis had a point where he needed a narrator voice to move the story along, and his character D1 that looks like him, the one that he uses probably, or the one that is Captain P.F. Dennis. Like it looks exactly like him, pops up in the middle of the mission and says, your captain passes out due to the extreme heat or whatever, and it's the only time during the entire series that happens. So I'm wondering if would you see a value in having a scripter, someone whose job it is to write all of the dialogue so that there's a consistency in things, like consistency in the fact that some people used NPC contact names and some people didn't, and some people put their last name first and some people put their first name first. And would there be a value in adding people or editors to keep a consistency among all of that?
I think it's a benefit time trade-off. So, for example, in this, this is a very scheduled development cycle, you can kind of call it. So we knew in June that we wanted to get it out before season 8 because we knew that there would be Foundry downtime. So it was kind of a risk that we knew about going in. If you guys recall those initial discussions, I think we even talked about the possibility of doing something like that. And
we also did not know exactly when season 8 was going to come out.
Yeah, I think we guessed November, right?
We were guessing around now, and I mean I was the one who was pushing you to make it a very long development cycle, as I remember, and you wanted it a little bit shorter, I think, because you want. I don't know. Sometimes long time periods are actually not very conducive to people working very quickly.
Yeah, I think we went with this time frame only because having I think that it was 4 months to put together a mission. I felt like that was enough time without having it be so long that people forget about it or don't do it, or that's
procrastinate and do it all at the last minute.
Exactly. So I kind of light the fire under a couple people's butts and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's one of the, that's just one of the, so having a scripter, at some point, let me back up a little bit. I think each person's mission I still felt like having their own, giving the individual authors, enough creativity to make their mission instead of I've got to make, Captain P.F. Dennis's mission now. And I only got delegated to me because one man cannot make 6 missions by himself in 4 months,
Well, what they do consider here is that when you watch TV series like Star Trek Voyager, for example, or The Next Generation, or whatever, there's a video someone posted on YouTube where they took plot inconsistencies that covered everything from the original series to Voyager and Star Trek Enterprise and the movies, where different script writers had made one-off comments that weren't important to the plot that contradicted something someone else said. And
sure.
Yeah, the pros do it too.
Yeah,
that's absolutely for sure.
Something I had kind of put forward in the
one of Captain Picard's monologues in one episode will often have a different tone from a monologue he does in a later episode, and so on.
Sure.
Something I had kind of put forward a couple of episodes ago is we were actually talking about this, the inconsistencies that I kind of bring out in having multiple authors like this, and I had suggested some sort of style guide where it basically laid out how certain aspects of dialogue are formatted, like how Captain's dialogue is handled, how how the little buttons are formatted, what titles are used for, or how is orange text used, how is green text used, and just kind of just assembling a document together that laid out all of these. I mean, it was completely irrelevant what that document says, as long as everyone decides on it and adheres to it.
I think it's still a balancing act, because you still got guys that are not paid to do this. I mean, that was one of the tricks with doing this, is like, I don't want to exert so much control, or Paul does, Captain P.F. Dennis doesn't want to exert so much control that, that these guys that are doing this in their spare time are not still motivated. So it's kind of a balancing act. Like, do you want to, because for example, Captain P.F. Dennis wants to do Captain Dialogue. Do you want to outlaw that? Because that's like a mainstay for him when he writes missions.
So I guess I would, this is kind of a devil's advocate argument here. I think that, the attitude that you've just expressed is a great attitude to take toward this sort of project if you're simply making a project that is being promoted as, here this is in the Foundry, it's a cool 6-part series that you can do. But this project was mentioned on the front page of the website, was immediately spotlighted, just for being the multi-part series that it is. And, just being on the front page of the website means that the possibility existed that it got mentioned on StarTrek.com. I mean, it was a bit, there's playing devil's advocate there. This was a little bit bigger and more important than your standard Foundry series to put that out there.
Well, as we said, this is sort of a test bed as well for future. And, I think something that I would advise future projects to do is to build in maybe a little more time for people to get their scripts done. Allow the authors the freedom to do their own scripting. Cause I know it's always easier for me when I do it myself rather than trying to work on somebody else's materials, maps and everything. But, and then have someone who's a script coordinator. This is something that I know a lot of TV shows have. Somebody who goes through the scripts and looks for continuity issues. And that's all they do. Is, they might be on set and you start filming a scene and you look at the coordinator and you say, okay, so, this scene falls in this point in the script. How dirty should my actor be? How ripped should his clothing be?
Yeah. Sure.
I think
it's just a call you have to make when you're putting it together. So, I mean, the thing about this kind of series is it's not like there's a precedent, right. All of our scripts must be written like cryptic missions or something like that. There's just no precedent. So I think that's one of the strengths of like the Foundry is you get like a different style from different authors. But I mean, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things that we can see what the reaction is.
I think what Dragoon just said actually is kind of the compromise. I think that not the compromise, but it's kind of what my mind is looking for, because it wasn't so much that the dialogue sounded different. Like what you're saying is absolutely true. One of the biggest strengths of the Foundry is each different author having a different voice, and that's kind of why I play the Foundry and what I want to hear, right? But the inconsistency of sometimes Captain's dialogue appearing in a big block of yellow text and sometimes it only appearing in buttons and sometimes someone's name being like, produced as Enterprise, Rogue, and sometimes being Rogue Enterprise. It's like, that's a stylistic thing. That's a style choice. And maybe having a style guide kind of thing would be kind of neat, would be...
Sure. And if you have everybody sort of work on it before and decide on it together and everybody agree on it, and then you kind of eliminate that.
It's another one of those how much time that would add, though, to all decide on that.
It would be something you have to decide on. And
it'd be something you do very, very early in the process.
You'd have to have all the dialogue written out ahead of time, right? Which not everyone
Not necessarily.
does.
I mean, if you're
just doing a style guide, you can do that right at the beginning.
Oh, sure.
If you want to have a script coordinator who goes through and looks for continuity issues, you could do it either as, you could have people file their scripts. I mean, a lot of us I mean, I was writing up until the very last day almost when mine was due. But, you could have a period of time built in there and say, have your outline done this time, have your script done this time, and build in some time for the script editor to look through them all, bring it back, and then, okay, everybody go start making your missions.
Sure. Yeah, it's just another level of complexity depending on, how you schedule things.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the big things that separates a project such as this from someone just doing a mission on their own, is that it does require all this complexity and a certain amount of working with a group, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm surprised. Yeah, I'm surprised everything worked so well. I thought for sure that people were going to butt heads about something creative, but I don't know.
Not honestly that I saw. I mean, we all worked together pretty well.
Yeah. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I didn't make a mission part of the series, is because I hate working on other people's ideas. As good as Paul's ideas was, I was like, this isn't my idea. Why would I want to make a mission about it? So I thought for sure somebody's going to run to this, like, I don't want to kill this character now. I love this character, but.
Well, and that's part of, what I liked about it, actually, was working on a mission that had, because we had that big story brainstorm, and some of my ideas got incorporated, and it was great to sort of work from something that had some of my ideas in it, but had input from others as well. I thought that was a really cool part of it.
Sure. I think that was one of the two hardest things that we did. The hardest thing that group of people did was sit down and create a story together. That's the hardest thing to do, because
now see the funny thing is I don't think that was all that hard for this group. It might be hard for other groups, but I think we did pretty well on that. The hardest thing,
the issue is that people have fragile
coming
egos.
Up with a name.
Yeah, that was what I was
coming up with a name
thing
was the hardest.
Yes,
names are hard. That's the other thing.
I had a couple hour-long conversation about that.
Well,
over
me personally, though, a lot of my missions have names that are just something completely, utterly arbitrary. The Beta Rana incident was actually the most well-thought-out name I ever gave to a Foundry mission.
Well, we wanted something well thought out and something that applied, and we came up with many, many things that, you come up with one thing and a couple of people say, yeah, that's great, and a couple other people say, no, that's terrible. And where do you go from there? I liked, we had one that was called Weapons and Whispers. I liked that one myself.
I think it was the longest discussion
It's probably the longest single discussion on any aspect of it that we had.
I think you're totally right.
As far as I know. So, I mean, and we had it very, very late in the game, so that's something I want to pass down to everybody is, come up with a name very early on. Get that discussion out of the way.
I would say that that's almost a reason to have a director, is to kind of someone who can kind of coordinate all of the creative aspirations of the authors involved.
Mm-hmm. And in that respect, Rogue Enterprise failed completely.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding, but that was one of those discussions where I was encouraging you. It was like, Rogue, just pick something.
Yeah.
You refused.
It's one of those. Yeah. It was one of those things where I didn't want to make it my thing, and Paul, I think Paul, honestly, Kevin P.F. Dennis has had more, control in that way than I did. And rightfully so. I mean, he's a storyteller guy, so. But in other words, I didn't want to, force choke everyone into submission. I wanted people to be able to express, what they wanted to.
Next time you're not allowed to be the project manager.
I just can watch.
Project manager.
I will tell you. I will tell you that, Purity was not, I didn't come up with it, and it wasn't the one that I liked, but it kind of grew on me, and I was certainly willing to be happy with it. And I think that's part of, if you're going to join one of these crews of people making a collaborative mission, it's one of those things where you're better off if you sort of check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
And just work with everybody, be willing to compromise, don't be like Congress.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I was going to say, in fact, any creative endeavor, you need to do that, or collaborative creative endeavor, I should say. you really need to do that. I mean,
And especially on collaborative creative endeavors.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say the single most difficult aspect of this whole thing was, like, so we had weekly check-ins and green lights before every mission,
Which had poorish attendance.
yeah.
You might
so
say.
it was a little bit hard getting people to go to those, just because
Even I missed a few.
yeah. I mean, it's just one of those things where people are, it's the weekend on their spare time. But we had some people, no names named, Tippy, but would have trouble staying on track and staying focused. So like keeping like meetings on the agenda, like controlled by the agenda was a little bit difficult, because people would, we'd have like, okay, like
We
need
know
to
about
greenlight-
tangents here.
Yeah.
No.
We all do.
I think publishing agendas is something I would take from that.
Yes, in
before
fact, I
meeting-
did publish agendas. Ah.
It's true, he did. Nobody read them.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Yeah.
I know that he did.
featured
Yes.
episode series, turning the Foundry into a job.
Yeah. That's kind of what it is, right? You're expecting people to do things on a schedule in their free time, without getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, I think that's probably the biggest reason why this hasn't happened yet, is because nobody's cared enough to do it.
Well, we're running into our time limit here, so I'm going to end with something that Mark was actually alluding to earlier. But I'm going to end with a quick question, and I'm going to encourage you to give me a quick answer. Going around the table here. If someone else were to do a featured episode series, what kind of storyline would you like to see? Rogue first.
I want to see something that is cross-faction, so like the same story from all the different sides, or one continuous story across the different factions.
Cool. Hippie John.
Come back to me.
No fair. Green Dragoon.
I am going to one-up Rogue Enterprise and say I want to see something cross-game, where that different parts of the series take place in both Stowe and Neverwinter.
It just blew my mind, man. I don't know.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
You so crazy? All right. Mark Hawkman, what sort of story would you like to see in the next big series?
I would like to see a follow-up to Divide et Impera.
Yeah, I think you were mentioning something about the Undyne storylines.
I actually had a plot for a follow-up to Divide et Impera.
Okay, I have my answer.
You have your answer finally.
I do. I would want a featured episode series that is not just cross-faction, but that the episodes are cross-faction, not the way that they do it currently, but where episode 1 is played by your Federation character. Episode 2 might also be your Federation character, but episode 3 is played by a Romulan character who is involved in the story in some way, and episode 4 is a Klingon character, and episode 5 maybe somehow, involves, playing one, your favorite of the 3, and it doesn't matter which one, kind of thing. That's what I would like to see.
Very cool.
One thing that suddenly occurred to me is that it would be interesting if it's, say, depending on the nature of the featured episode series, to see a featured episode series that is truly faction agnostic in a similar way to how the Borg STS are currently set up. So that this mission would actually allow you to say KDF players as pets.
Be nice if we had that ability. Well, some great ideas there, and I'm going to throw out one that's really crazy to end this. I'd like to see a featured Foundry series that kills off the player character. Yeah, you weren't ready for that one. All right, but for now,
I could not imagine that.
Crazy. But for now, we will say goodnight.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.